I'm Connie 57, and the gold Rolex that sits in my bedside drawer is all I have left of my Richard. For 2 years, it's been my anchor, my connection to him. But last week, I found the velvet box empty. The betrayal cut deeper because it came from those I trusted most. Some say it's just a watch, but when you lose someone, objects become sacred vessels of memory. Before I share what happened, let me know where you're watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever treasured something that others just couldn't understand. Richard and I had 30 beautiful years together before pancreatic cancer stole him away. We met in our small Minnesota town when I was waiting tables at the local diner, and he had just started teaching science at the high school. He came in every Tuesday and Thursday, always requesting my section, always leaving a thoughtful note with his modest tip. It wasn't about the money. It was the way he saw me, when everyone else just saw a server. Our courtship was simple but meaningful. Walks by Lake Harriet picnics, where he would explain the science behind cloud formations, weekend drives to small towns we'd never visited. Richard had this wonderful way of finding beauty in ordinary things. Life isn't about grand gestures, Connie, he would say. It's about appreciating the everyday miracles. We built our life in a modest 3-bedroom home in the Minneapolis suburbs. Richard continued teaching, touching thousands of young lives over his career. I worked as a librarian, and together, we made enough to live comfortably, if not extravagantly. We had 2 children, Jason and Amanda. Our daughter Amanda took after Richard, thoughtful kind, always considering others. Jason was more headstrong, more focused on material things, but we loved him fiercely and tried to instill our values. The Rolex was Richard's one indulgence. He saved for 15 years, putting away small amounts from each paycheck. I remember the day he finally bought it, not from some luxury boutique, but from a reputable jeweler who specialized in watches. It was a gold date, just with a simple dial, elegant, but not flashy. Richard wasn't showing off. He simply appreciated fine craftsmanship and had wanted that specific watch since he was a young man. "This watch will outlive me," he joked when he brought it home. These things are built to last generations. We couldn't have known how prophetic those words would be. When the diagnosis came, it felt like the universe had played a cruel trick. Richard, healthy, active Richard, who cycled 20 miles every weekend, had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim from the start. 6 months, maybe a year, with aggressive treatment. Richard faced it with the same quiet dignity with which he'd lived his life. "Everyone's clock runs out, eventually," he told me one night as I cried beside his hospital bed. "I just wish I had a little more time with you." In those final weeks, as the disease ravaged his body, Richard began putting his affairs in order. He wrote letters to our children, organized our financial documents, and made sure I knew where everything important was kept. The night before he died, he asked the nurse to bring him the small bag of personal items I'd brought from home. From it, he pulled out his watch. "Connie," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "I want you to have this, not to sell it or put it away somewhere. Keep it close. When you look at it, remember that time is precious, just like the moments we shared." He placed it in my palm, and I felt the weight of it, not just physical, but emotional. In that moment, the watch transformed from a luxury item to a sacred vessel, holding 30 years of love and memories. Richard passed peacefully the next morning, with me by his side. In the chaotic grief that followed, that watch became my anchor. I kept it in its original velvet box on my bedside table, and each morning I would hold it for a few minutes, sometimes talking to Richard as if he could hear me through this object he had touched so often. "Good morning, love," I would say, running my fingers over the smooth gold and glass. "It's going to be a beautiful day. I wish you were here to see it." Some might call it silly, this ritual, but grief takes the shape it needs to take. For me, that shape was a gold Rolex that represented not wealth or status, but the precious time I'd been given with the love of my life. I wish I could say my relationship with Jason and his wife Taylor had been smooth sailing, but that would be far from the truth. Jason had always been somewhat entitled, even as a child. Where Amanda would save her allowance, Jason would spend his immediately and then ask for more. Where Amanda would express gratitude for gifts, Jason would often seem disappointed they weren't more expensive or impressive. I chalked it up to personality differences, and Richard and I did our best to guide him while respecting his individuality. By the time he graduated college, we hoped he had matured past some of these tendencies. For a while, it seemed he had. He secured a decent job in marketing and moved to a small apartment in downtown Minneapolis. We were proud of him for standing on his own 2 feet. Then, he met Taylor at a networking event. She was beautiful, charismatic, and ambitious. A social media lifestyle blogger with thousands of followers. Their whirlwind romance led to marriage within 8 months of meeting. Richard and I were surprised by the speed, but supported Jason's choice. All we ever wanted was his happiness. From the beginning, my relationship with Taylor was strained. I tried to welcome her into our family with open arms. I invited her for lunch, suggested shopping trips, offered family recipes. But Taylor always seemed to hold me at arm's length. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when we spoke, and she often checked her phone during our conversations. "You don't understand modern relationships," she once told me, when I mentioned how Richard and I used to have a weekly date night. "Jason and I don't need scheduled time together. We're more spontaneous." There was always a subtle barb in her comments, a suggestion that my ways were outdated and irrelevant. After Richard died, things got worse. Taylor seemed annoyed by my grief, as if I was being dramatic by still missing my husband 6 months after his passing. "You need to move on," she said during a family dinner. "It's not healthy to dwell." Jason didn't contradict her, which hurt almost as much as her comment. Their financial issues became apparent about a year into their marriage. Despite their combined income being quite substantial, they were constantly short on cash. The reason was obvious to anyone looking in from the outside. Their lifestyle was unsustainable. The luxury apartment in the trendiest part of the city. The new cars leased every 2 years. The designer clothes Taylor deemed necessary for her social media brand. The expensive restaurants they frequented, not because the food was exceptional, but because they were seen as status symbols. The first time Jason asked to borrow money, it was for their property tax bill. "We're a little short this month, Mom," he said. "Just a temporary thing. I'll pay you back next month." I gave him the money without hesitation. That's what parents do. But next month became next quarter, which became, "I'll get it to you eventually." Taylor's requests were less direct, but equally frequent. "That necklace you're wearing is so classic," she might say. "You have such timeless pieces. I wish I could afford quality jewelry like that." The hint was clear, and more than once I gave her pieces of my own jewelry, telling myself it was a way to bond with my daughter-in-law. When Richard was alive, he would gently suggest that perhaps we were enabling behavior that wasn't healthy. After he was gone, There was no one to provide that counterbalance to my desire to help our son. The requests became more frequent, the amounts larger, the excuses less convincing. About 3 weeks before the watch disappeared, Jason and Taylor came for Sunday dinner. They were unusually animated, excited about something. "We've booked a trip to Bali," Taylor announced, showing me photos of an exclusive resort on her phone. 3 weeks in paradise. "That sounds wonderful," I said, genuinely happy to see them excited. "When are you going?" "Next month," Jason said. "We got a great deal on a package." Even with a great deal, I knew such a trip would cost thousands. Just the previous week, Jason had asked to borrow money for car repairs. I wanted to ask how they could afford this luxury vacation when they couldn't cover their basic expenses, but I kept quiet. I didn't want to spoil their excitement or seem judgmental. "We're staying in one of their standard villas," Taylor continued, scrolling through pictures. "Although I really wish we could upgrade to the oceanfront one. The views are so much better for my Instagram." The hint was clear, but for once, I didn't take the bait. Something about the situation didn't sit right with me. As they were leaving, Taylor hugged me, something she rarely did. "We should have you over for dinner soon," she said. "Our place." "I'd like that," I replied, touched by the gesture. Looking back, I should have recognized these unusual behaviors as red flags. The excessive enthusiasm, the sudden affection, the specific mention of the resort upgrade they wished they could afford. They were setting the stage, but I was too trusting to see it. My daily ritual with Richard's watch was sacred. Each morning, I would wake up, make a cup of coffee, and then sit on the edge of my bed. I would open the velvet box, take out the Rolex, and hold it in my hands as I talked to Richard about my plans for the day, or any worries on my mind. It sounds strange to those who haven't experienced profound grief, but these one-sided conversations were healing for me. The morning I discovered the watch was missing began like any other. Sunshine streamed through my bedroom window as I reached for the familiar box. When I opened it and found it empty, I initially thought I must have misplaced the watch. Perhaps I'd worn it the previous day and forgotten to put it back. But no, I never wore it. It was too precious, too meaningful to risk losing. I searched my bedroom methodically. At first, checking the obvious places, my jewelry box, my dresser drawers, the bathroom counter. As my search turned up, panic began to rise in my chest. I moved through the house with increasing desperation, looking in places the watch couldn't possibly be. Kitchen cabinets, the refrigerator, behind sofa cushions. 3 hours later, I sat in the middle of my living room floor, surrounded by displaced cushions and empty drawers, and accepted the truth. The watch was gone. With shaking hands, I called Amanda in Chicago. She answered on the second ring, and I could hear the sounds of her busy life in the background, her children playing the TV on low. "Mom, is everything okay? You never call this early." The concern in her voice broke something in me, and I began to sob. "Richard's watch is gone." "What? Are you sure you didn't misplace it?" "I've looked everywhere, Amanda. It's gone. Someone took it." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Were there any signs of a break-in? Broken windows, forced locks? I hadn't even thought to check. In my panic over the missing watch, I hadn't considered how it might have disappeared. I put Amanda on speaker and walked through the house, checking doors and windows. "The back window in the kitchen is unlocked," I reported, "and it's open a crack. I always keep that locked." "Mom, you need to call the police. This sounds like a break-in." "But nothing else is missing," I said, looking around. "My laptop is still here. My jewelry box hasn't been touched." That's actually more concerning, Amanda said, her voice tight with worry. It means whoever took it knew exactly what they were looking for. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. You think someone targeted Richard's watch specifically? I don't know, Mom. But you should call Jason, too. Maybe he noticed something when he was over last. Or he might know if anyone has been asking about Dad's things. The suggestion made sense, but something held me back from calling Jason immediately. A tiny voice of suspicion I wasn't ready to acknowledge. I'll call him after I talk to the police, I promised. The police arrived within the hour. A young officer named Davis, with kind eyes and a patient manner. He took down my information and details about the missing watch, including its serial number, which I'd kept with the warranty information. "And when did you last see the watch, Mrs. Collins?" he asked. "Yesterday morning. I check it every day." He raised an eyebrow at that, but didn't comment. "And you're certain no one else has a key to your home? Just my children. My daughter Amanda lives in Chicago. My son Jason lives here in town with his wife." "And when was the last time your son was here?" "Sunday for dinner, 3 days ago." Officer Davis nodded, making notes. "We'll file a report and check with local pawn shops. These kinds of watches are distinctive and difficult to sell without proper paperwork. If someone tries to pawn it, we should be able to recover it." After the officer left, the house felt emptier than before. The violation of having someone enter my home and take something so precious left me feeling vulnerable and exposed. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of my bedroom door and lay awake, listening for sounds of intrusion, wondering who could have betrayed my trust so completely. The next morning, exhausted from lack of sleep, I finally called Jason. The conversation was brief and unsatisfying. He seemed distracted and uninterested in my distress. "I'm sure it'll turn up, Mom," he said dismissively. "You probably just misplaced it." "Jason, someone broke in through the kitchen window. The police have filed a report." A pause. "You called the cops already. Don't you think that's an overreaction?" "It's just a watch." His words stung. "It's not just a watch, Jason. It was your father's. It's all I have left of him. You have photos and memories, Mom. You don't need some object to remember Dad." Before I could respond, I heard Taylor's voice in the background, asking who he was talking to. "I gotta go, Mom. Try not to worry so much. Things are just things." The call left me feeling hollow. Jason's dismissive attitude was so unlike him, or at least unlike the son I thought I knew. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider the unthinkable. Could Jason have taken his father's watch? I pushed the thought away immediately. No matter how entitled or financially irresponsible Jason might be, he wouldn't steal from me. He wouldn't take the one thing that brought me daily comfort. He couldn't be that cruel. But as another sleepless night passed, the seed of suspicion grew roots in my mind, unwelcome but impossible to ignore. The doorbell rang early Thursday morning, 5 days after I discovered the watch was missing. I opened the door to find Jason and Taylor standing there, both dressed in new clothes I hadn't seen before. Taylor wore designer sunglasses, pushed up on her head, and carried a leather handbag I recognized from luxury advertisements as costing well over $1,000. "Surprise visit," Taylor said, with unusual cheerfulness. "We thought we'd check on you after your incident." I invited them in, offering coffee, which they accepted. As I prepared it in the kitchen, I could hear them talking in low voices, stopping abruptly when I returned with the mugs. "So," Jason said, accepting his coffee. "Any news on the missing watch?" Something about his tone seemed off, almost as if he was playing a part. "No," I replied, studying his face. "The police are checking with local pawn shops." Taylor shifted uncomfortably in her seat. That seems excessive for an old watch. It was Richard's watch, I corrected. And it's worth quite a lot, both sentimentally and financially. Speaking of finances, Jason interjected, clearly changing the subject. We have some good news. We were able to upgrade our Bali accommodations. We'll be staying in that oceanfront villa Taylor wanted. That's wonderful, I said cautiously. Did you get a promotion at work? Not exactly, Jason replied, exchanging a glance with Taylor. Just, moved some things around in our budget. The conversation continued, with them sharing details about their upcoming trip. The excursions, they'd booked the restaurants they planned to try, the outfits Taylor had purchased specifically for their vacation photos. Throughout their enthusiastic descriptions, I noticed they'd both acquired several new items. Jason's watch was new, as were Taylor's earrings. People struggling to make car payments don't suddenly have money for luxury vacations and new accessories. Finally, I couldn't bear it anymore. I need to ask you something. Jason and I need you to be honest with me. His smile faltered. What is it, Mom? Did you take your father's watch? The room went silent. Taylor suddenly became very interested in her coffee mug. Jason's face cycled through several emotions: surprise, guilt, and finally, defiance. Why would you ask me that? He deflected. Because it's missing, and suddenly you have money for villa upgrades and new clothes, and you've been acting strange since I told you about the break-in. You're being paranoid, Taylor cut in. Just because you lost some old watch doesn't mean you should accuse family. I didn't lose it, I said firmly. It was taken, and it wasn't just some old watch. It was your father's watch, Jason. The watch he gave me on his deathbed. Jason's jaw tightened a gesture so like his father, it made my heart ache. Fine. Yes, I took it. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. Why? I whispered. How could you do that to me? Stop whining. It's already sold. I needed that money for my trip, Jason said, his voice cold in a way I'd never heard before. We were going to pay you back eventually. Taylor nodded in agreement. You weren't using it anyway. It was just sitting in a box. I struggled to comprehend the callousness of their actions. That watch was sacred to me. It was my connection to your father. How could you think money for a vacation was more important than that? Dad would have wanted us to enjoy life, Jason said defensively. He wouldn't have wanted that watch sitting in a drawer, unused. Don't you dare presume to know what your father would have wanted, I said, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. That watch was the last thing he ever gave me. He specifically asked me to keep it close, to use it to remember our time together. Taylor rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. It's been 2 years. You need to move on instead of living in the past. Move on, I repeated incredulously. You think grieving the love of my life has an expiration date. You think stealing from me is justified because you've decided I should move on. We didn't steal it, Jason argued. You're my mother. What's yours is mine, eventually, anyway. The entitlement in his statement left me speechless. This wasn't the son I'd raised. This wasn't the boy who'd cried at his father's funeral, who'd promised to always be there for me. I want to know where you sold it, I said finally. I want to try to get it back. That's not happening, Taylor said quickly. The money's spent. We've paid for our trip. It's done. Where did you sell it? I repeated, focusing on Jason. He stood up abruptly. This conversation is over. Get over it, Mom. People die. Life goes on. You can't just cling to objects forever. Those aren't your words, I said, recognizing Taylor's influence in his cruelty. You know how much your father loved you, how much I love you. How could you betray that love? Love doesn't pay for experiences, Taylor snapped. Love doesn't create Instagram content or help build our brand. They left shortly after, refusing to tell me where they'd sold the watch. As the door closed behind them, I sank to the floor, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their betrayal. It wasn't just about the watch anymore. It was about discovering that my own son could violate my trust so completely, could dismiss my grief so callously, could choose a luxury vacation over his mother's most treasured possession. For the first time since Richard died, I felt truly alone. The day after Jason's confession, I woke with a new resolve. If Jason wouldn't tell me where he'd sold the watch, I would find out myself. I called Amanda immediately, my voice steady, despite the pain still raw in my chest. They did what? Amanda's outrage was immediate and validating. "I'm coming home. I'll be on the next flight." "You don't need to do that," I protested weakly, though part of me desperately wanted her support. "Yes, I do. This isn't just about the watch, Mom. This is about Jason crossing a line that should never be crossed. You shouldn't have to deal with this alone." While waiting for Amanda to arrive, I began researching local pawn shops. Minneapolis had dozens, and without knowing which one Jason had visited, I was facing a daunting task. Still, I created a methodical plan, listing shops by proximity to Jason's apartment and calling each to describe the watch. Most conversations were brief and unhelpful. Either they hadn't seen a watch matching my description, or they couldn't disclose information about transactions due to privacy policies. By the time Amanda arrived that evening, I had checked 15 shops with no success. Amanda hugged me tightly at the door, her eyes fierce with protective anger. "We're going to find it, Mom, and then we're going to have a serious family discussion about boundaries and respect." The next morning, we continued the search together. Amanda drove while I navigated crossing shops off our list one by one. By mid-afternoon, we had visited 3 more places in person with no luck. "Let's try that one," I said, pointing to a small shop tucked between a laundromat and a convenience store. The sign read, "Golden Opportunity Pawn," in faded gold letters. The interior was dimly lit, but surprisingly organized. Behind the counter stood a man in his 70s, with silver hair and the ramrod straight posture of someone with military background. His name tag read Frank. "Afternoon, ladies," he greeted us. "What can I help you with today?" I described Richard's watch in detail. The gold date, just model, the year it was purchased, the small scratch on the back of the case that Richard had gotten when he scraped it against a classroom desk. Frank's expression changed subtly as I spoke. "May I ask why you're looking for this particular watch?" "It was my husband's," I explained. "He passed away 2 years ago and left it to me. It was taken from my home recently." "Stolen?" Frank asked, his bushy eyebrows rising. I hesitated. "Taken by someone who had access to my home. My son." Frank's face softened with understanding. "I see. And you're trying to get it back." "Yes. It's very important to me. It's not about the money." Frank seemed to be weighing something in his mind. "We have a strict policy about customer privacy," he began, and my heart sank. Then he continued, "But I also have a personal code about family heirlooms. Would you happen to have any proof the watch was yours? A photo, perhaps?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a picture of Richard wearing the watch at our daughter's college graduation. Frank studied it carefully, then nodded. "I think I may have seen this watch recently," he said cautiously. "Can you describe this person who might have brought it in?" "My son Jason. 34, brown hair, about 6 feet tall. He might have been with his wife Taylor. Blonde, very put together." Frank's expression confirmed my suspicion. "Ma'am, you need to see what your son wrote on the sale form." He disappeared into a back room and returned with a folder. Opening it, he showed me a form with Jason's signature at the bottom. Under item description, he had written Rolex, date just inherited, from grandfather, no sentimental value. The casual lie took my breath away. Not only had he stolen the watch, but he had erased its true significance, invented a fictional provenance, and explicitly denied its sentimental value. Even worse was the amount listed, $2,000. The watch was worth at least $8,000, likely more given its age and condition. Jason had practically given it away in his haste to fund his vacation. "I recognized it as valuable and offered what I could," Frank explained. "But the young man seemed in a hurry to sell, wouldn't negotiate or wait for me to call in an expert. Can I buy it back?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Frank's expression grew troubled. "That's where things get complicated. I haven't processed it for resale yet, but legally it belongs to the shop now. If I just give it back to you, I could lose my license." My hope deflated. "I understand. But," Frank continued, "there might be another way. What your son did, taking something without permission and selling it, that's theft. If you filed a police report, I'd have to report my own son." I finished the realization, sitting heavy in my chest. Amanda, who had been quietly supportive until now, spoke up. "Mom, what Jason did was wrong. There need to be consequences." Frank nodded in agreement. "I lost my father's service medals to my brother's gambling debts years ago. Family can hurt you in ways strangers never could, because you don't see it coming." I looked at this stranger, who somehow understood my pain so completely. "What would happen to Jason if I filed a report?" "That would depend on whether you wanted to press charges," Frank explained. "But it would create a legal pathway for me to return the watch to its rightful owner." "I don't want Jason to go to jail," I said, the very thought making me ill, despite my anger. "Filing a report doesn't necessarily mean he'll be arrested," Frank assured me. "It establishes the facts of what happened. What you do after that, whether you pursue charges or not, would be up to you." Amanda put her hand on my shoulder. "Mom, this isn't just about the watch anymore. Jason needs to understand that actions have consequences. He betrayed your trust in the worst possible way." As I stood in that pawn shop, caught between my love for my son and my need to recover the last physical connection to my husband, a plan began to form. Perhaps there was a way to recover the watch and help Jason understand the gravity of what he'd done without destroying our family completely. "Is there a way," I asked slowly, "that we could use the threat of charges to get Jason to understand what he's done to make this right?" Frank and Amanda exchanged glances. "I think," Frank said carefully, "that might be exactly what your son needs right now." The police officer who took my report was the same one who had come to my home initially, Officer Davis. He remembered my case and wasn't entirely surprised when I explained what had happened. "Unfortunately, family theft is more common than people realize," he said as he filled out the paperwork, "especially with items of high value or sentimental significance." With the report filed, Frank was able to place a hold on the watch, preventing it from being sold, while the ownership dispute was resolved. The next step was confronting Jason and Taylor, something I dreaded but knew was necessary. Amanda suggested we meet on neutral ground, but I disagreed. "I want them to come to the house," I said firmly. "I want Jason to be in the home where he grew up, where his father lived, when he faces what he's done. We arranged for Officer Davis to be present, but unobtrusive, waiting in the kitchen while I spoke with Jason and Taylor in the living room. Frank had also offered to come as a witness to the pawn transaction, an offer I gratefully accepted. Jason and Taylor arrived Sunday afternoon, clearly annoyed at being summoned. "This better be quick, Mom," Jason said as they entered. "We have a lot to do before our trip next week." "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch. "There's something important we need to discuss." They exchanged glances, but complied. I remained standing, drawing strength from Amanda's presence beside me. "I found your father's watch," I said without preamble. Jason's face paled slightly, but Taylor maintained her composure. "Good for you," she said dismissively. "Can we go now?" "It was at Golden Opportunity Pawn," I continued, "where you sold it for a fraction of its value after stealing it from my bedroom." "We've been through this," Jason sighed. "It wasn't stealing. We borrowed it. We're family." "Taking something without permission is stealing, Jason, even from family," Amanda interjected, her voice tight with anger. "Especially something so meaningful." "Whatever," Taylor said, rolling her eyes. "It's done. The money's spent. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine. We're sorry you're so upset about an old watch." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I filed a police report." That got their attention. Jason sat up straight, his expression incredulous. "You what?" "I filed a police report for theft. I have a case number, and the watch has been flagged as stolen property." Taylor laughed nervously. "You can't be serious. You called the cops on your own son over a watch." "Not just a watch," I corrected. "Over a betrayal of trust. Over the casual cruelty with which you dismissed something sacred to me. Over the lie Jason wrote on the pawn form, claiming the watch belonged to his grandfather and had no sentimental value." Jason's face flushed. "How did you know what I wrote?" Rather than answer, I walked to the kitchen and returned with Officer Davis and Frank in tow. Taylor's smug expression faltered, and Jason paled visibly. "This is Officer Davis," I introduced, "and this is Frank from Golden Opportunity Pawn, who has been extremely helpful in this situation." "Mrs. Collins has filed a report of theft," Officer Davis explained professionally. "The item in question has been identified at Mr. Thompson's establishment and placed on hold pending resolution of this matter." "This is ridiculous," Taylor sputtered. "You can't prove anything." Frank cleared his throat. "I have the sales form with your husband's signature, ma'am, as well as security camera footage of the transaction. There's no question about what transpired." "So what happens now?" Jason asked, his voice small and uncertain. Are you having me arrested?" The vulnerability in his question reminded me suddenly of the little boy who used to crawl into my lap after scraping his knee, seeking comfort and reassurance. Despite everything, he was still my son. "That depends on you, Jason," I said, softening my tone slightly. "I have the right to press charges for theft. If convicted, you could face significant consequences." Taylor gripped Jason's arm, her face a mask of panic. "This is insane. It's just a stupid watch." "No," I said firmly, looking directly at her. "This isn't about a watch. This is about respect, honesty, and the memory of your father." I turned back to Jason. "I'm willing to drop the charges under certain conditions." "What conditions?" he asked cautiously. "First, you will repay the pawn shop the $2,000 you received, and I will recover the watch." "We don't have $2,000, Taylor protested. "We spent it on our trip." Then you'll cancel the trip and get refunds, Amanda suggested coldly. Or you'll sell some of your designer items. Figure it out. Second, I continued, you will agree to attend therapy, Jason. Not couples therapy, individual therapy. What you did shows a fundamental disconnect from empathy and family values that concerns me deeply. Jason looked ready to object, but a glance at Officer Davis silenced him. Third, I want a genuine apology. Not just words, but actions that show you understand the gravity of what you've done and are committed to rebuilding trust. The room fell silent as Jason and Taylor absorbed my terms. Finally, Jason spoke, his voice uncharacteristically humble. And if I agree to these conditions, you'll drop the charges. Yes, I confirmed. This isn't about punishment, Jason. It's about healing, for all of us. What followed was a difficult but necessary conversation. Taylor initially tried to minimize their actions and deflect blame, but faced with the legal reality of their situation, even she eventually fell silent. Jason, to my surprise, became increasingly remorseful as the discussion continued, as if finally seeing his actions through others' eyes. I don't know what I was thinking, he admitted finally, tears in his eyes. It's like, lately, all I can focus on is keeping up appearances, impressing Taylor's followers, living this lifestyle we can't afford. I lost sight of what really matters. The mention of her influence seemed to offend Taylor, who stood abruptly. I need some air, she announced, walking out the front door without waiting for a response. With Taylor gone, Jason seemed to deflate vulnerability, replacing his earlier defiance. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. Dad would be so disappointed in me. Yes, I agreed gently. He would be. But he would also believe in your capacity to make this right and learn from it. In the end, Jason agreed to all my conditions. Officer Davis explained that he would keep the report on file, but not process charges as long as Jason complied with our agreement. Frank arranged for me to reclaim the watch once Jason repaid the $2,000, which he promised to do within the week, by selling some electronics and canceling parts of their Bali trip. As they were leaving, Jason hugged me. A real hug, not the perfunctory embraces I'd grown accustomed to. I'll make this right, he whispered. Somehow, I'll make this right. I wanted to believe him, but trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. Only time would tell if this painful lesson would lead to genuine change. 6 months passed, bringing significant changes to our family dynamic. True to his word, Jason repaid Frank within days of our confrontation, selling his gaming system, an expensive drone, to raise the money. Frank returned the watch to me, and our unexpected friendship continued to grow. As a fellow widower, he understood certain aspects of my grief that even my children couldn't fully comprehend. Jason began therapy as promised, starting with weekly sessions that gradually revealed deeper issues than I'd realized. His therapist helped him see how his need for status and external validation had roots in insecurities that dated back to his teenage years. He'd always felt he lived in the shadow of Richard's moral integrity and Amanda's natural achievements, developing materialistic values as a way to distinguish himself. The most surprising outcome was Jason's separation from Taylor. 3 months into therapy, he recognized how toxic their relationship had become, built on appearances rather than genuine connection. She had been pushing him to borrow the watch, knowing its value, dismissing his initial reluctance with arguments about entitlement and family obligation. She kept saying that inheriting something early isn't really stealing, Jason explained during one of our new weekly coffee meetings. She made it seem normal, like everyone does it. I knew it was wrong, but I was so afraid of losing her, of failing at marriage, like I felt I was failing at everything else. Taylor had left for Bali alone, using what money they'd managed to salvage from their canceled plans. She returned with a new boyfriend she'd met at the resort, making the separation easier than anticipated. Last I heard, she had moved to Los Angeles to pursue her influencer career. My relationship with Jason began healing through small, consistent steps. He started helping around my house, fixing the loose banister Richard had always meant to repair, mowing the lawn without being asked, showing up with groceries when he knew I'd been busy. These acts of service spoke louder than words, demonstrating his commitment to rebuilding trust. Amanda remained protective, taking longer to forgive her brother. He violated something sacred, she told me. I want to forgive him, but I need to see sustained change. I understood her hesitation. Trust is easier broken than rebuilt. Yet gradually, even she began to see the genuine transformation in her brother. Not just performative remorse, but real growth. Richard's watch returned to its place on my bedside table, but my relationship with it evolved. While still precious to me, I began wearing it occasionally for special family moments. Amanda's youngest child's baptism, a memorial gathering on the anniversary of Richard's passing. The watch became not just a vessel for grief, but a connection to living memory, a bridge between past joy and present healing. Perhaps the most unexpected development was the support group I started for widows and widowers who had experienced family conflicts after their loss. Meeting twice monthly in the community center, our small group shared stories of betrayal, misunderstanding, and eventually reconciliation. Frank became a regular attendee, an invaluable ally, offering perspective from his decades of observing human nature through his pawnshop window. People show you who they really are when they think no one's watching, he often said, but they also show you who they can become when held accountable with love. One evening, as our support group session ended, a new attendee approached me. Your story about the watch gave me courage to confront my own daughter about selling my wife's jewelry, he said. We're talking again for the first time in years. In that moment, I realized that the painful journey with Jason had rippled outward, creating space for others to heal similarly wounded relationships. Richard would have appreciated that. He always believed that our hardest experiences could become our greatest teachers if we allowed them to be. Jason continued his personal growth, eventually moving to a smaller apartment and finding purpose in volunteer work with veterans, something that would have made Richard immensely proud. During one of our coffee dates, he confided, I'm finally learning what Dad tried to teach me all those years, that character is built through integrity and service, not possessions or appearances. As I reflect on the journey from betrayal to healing, I recognize now that the watch itself was never the most valuable thing at stake. It was the principle of respect for boundaries, for grief, for family bonds that transcend material considerations. Jason violated those principles, but ultimately recommitted to them in a way that has made our relationship stronger, more authentic than before. Richard's watch continues to mark time on my wrist for special occasions, a tangible reminder that even our deepest wounds can heal with honesty, accountability, and love. Life's most precious possessions aren't things, but the connections we nurture and the integrity with which we treat one another. I sometimes imagine Richard watching our family's journey, the pain, the confrontation, the slow rebuilding of trust. I think he would be sad about the betrayal, but proud of the healing, especially Jason's willingness to face his mistakes and grow from them. Have you ever had a treasured possession that represented more than its material value? Something that connected you to someone you've lost? If so, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Please like this video. If it resonated with you, subscribe to my channel for more stories of family challenges and healing, and share with someone who might be struggling with similar issues. Remember, sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most meaningful growth. Thank you for listening, and may you treasure both your memories and your present moments just as they deserve to be treasured.